Welcome, crime family. This is True Crime.
State of Mind. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Brooke, and we are changing things up a little bit this time. So, Andrea had a bit of a rough week at work, so I actually did all of the research on this one. So she's just going to follow along with us, so that'll be fun.
I am excited to learn about this case.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at anything, so I'm really excited to hear about it.
Awesome. So she doesn't know anything about this one, except for what I've kind of leaked to her here and there when I was telling her that we were going to do this case. So this episode is Oregon. So we are going to go to Oregon for this one. And this is the case of the survivors, Michaelle, Dierich, and Andrea Hood, which I thought was a really interesting name because, of course, Andrea's name is Andrea, but Hood is also our nephew's last name.
I know, it's
so that's
trippy.
kind of weird, right? I'm like, Andrea Hood, that's weird. Anyway, and Dierich and Michelle's name is spelled really different too. It looks like Dierich, but it's pronounced Dierich. She pronounced it Dierich on the Crime Watch episode I watched. So
Oh, really?
that's how it's pronounced.
That seems weird.
And I thought it was Dietrich at first, but it doesn't have the T, and it's actually pronounced Dierich. So that's how you do that. So a little bit about the victims. So we have Michaelle Dierich, and she ran away from home at 19 years old. She self-admittedly was like, I gave my mom a really hard time. But so she ran away at 19 years old, and the actual incident happened when she was 20, so not long after. She became addicted to drugs, so she turned to sex work to help pay for them. And she lived in Portland, Oregon. And then we also have Andrea Hood, who is the same story. She had just turned 17 years old, and she was also a sex worker with a drug habit and lived in Portland, Oregon.
Ugh, that stuff makes me feel so bad. Like when you hear about teenagers turning to sex work, it's just so sad.
Yeah, and especially Andrea. So she had just turned 17. So she really was 16, but she
was
had
a
just
baby.
turned 17. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and
so
she
sad.
had actually gone out at 2:00 in the morning onto the streets to get money, because she said if she would work from 2 to 3, she could get enough money to support her drug habit for that day. So she basically did it every day.
That's so sad.
That's really, really sad. Mm-hmm. And there's also unknown other women, and I'll get into that when I get into the crime and everything. But I saw in multiple places, I saw some places that there were 10 unknown women. I saw some places where there were 3. I saw some places where there were 4. So I really don't know, but there were multiple unknown women, and because they found pictures of these women in the perpetrator's home in varying positions that were similar to what the survivors described, but they never identified those other women.
Ugh.
So kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But we will post the pictures that we have of the other women on the YouTube video too, and I'll give you a phone number if you think you might know who they are. And so the perpetrators are Vance Roberts and Paul Jackson, who are half brothers. Ugh.
That's kind of creepy.
Right?
Ugh.
They're brothers who raped together. So
that is so horrible.
Right? And they're half brothers, so they share, which means that they share a mother. They don't have the same father. And I have 2 half siblings. I don't have any full siblings. And so they kind of had a similar situation to what I did, where I didn't grow up with my half siblings, even though they shared a mother. So I believe Paul is actually a lot younger than Vance. Vance was 34 at the time, and Paul was 18. So they have a huge age difference. 16 years, I think that is.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Huge age difference. So they didn't really grow up together because,
right.
I mean, Vance was 16 when Paul was born.
That's crazy.
That's a lot. I mean, my half siblings and I are 5 and 9 years apart, but they didn't even live in the same state as me, so we didn't really grow up together. But these guys really didn't grow up together. And also the younger one was born in Hawaii, so I don't know if, and I couldn't find anywhere where the older one lived, so I have no idea if he lived with the mother or not.
Oh, I want to grow up in Hawaii.
I know.
Let's do a reset. I'm jealous.
Right? Deal. I think I'm actually going to go to Hawaii for my anniversary this year. We talked about it.
That's fun.
That'll be so fun. I know, it's only like 3 months away, so. And we don't need a passport to go there, so I need a passport so bad. But it's so backlogged right now, I keep putting it off, but I need to get one.
Yeah.
So anyways, so Vance Roberts, the older one, he is the one who lives in the home where the crimes took place. So Paul actually lived in Arizona at the time of the crimes. So he would go visit his brother in Oregon. And that's when they would go on a spree together. And Paul, the younger one, he has a background in electric and automotive work. So that's kind of how he got caught. So that'll show up later. So the crime took place in 1988. So we're going a little ways back.
Not too far back, though.
Not too far back. No. So at 19 years old, Michelle had run away from home, like I said, and she fell victim to a drug habit that then had her turning to sex work to feed her addiction. So one Friday night, she was out on the streets, and 2 men pick her up for a $30 date. So they drove a little ways, and then they kind of stopped, and she thought there was only one. It was a pickup truck, and she thought there was only one man in the truck, but it had like a camper shell on the back, and so they pull up to, like, they stop, and the driver knocks on the what is it called, like the windows that go to the back, the barricade. I don't know what that's called.
Something like that.
Like the windows that go to the back of the truck. And she's like, what the hell? So she's thinking, and then she hears like somebody moving around in the back, and she's like, oh shit, she doesn't know how many people are back there. She doesn't know what's going on. So the guy gets out of the back of the truck, and he comes around to the front, pulls her out of the passenger side, throws a pillowcase over her head, and then throws her in the back of the camper truck. And in the back of the camper truck, they have these like tie downs that you would use like if you were hauling something, and they chain her to these tie downs in the camper truck.
Oh my gosh.
And so while one of them is driving, the other one would sexually assault her in the back of the camper truck. So she's like, I have no idea how long we drove because I was being assaulted the whole time. So I wasn't really paying attention to like twists and turns or how many times we stopped or even how long they were in the car. We later found out that they had actually driven to Hillsboro from Portland, Oregon, which is about 17 miles away, and it's about a 25-minute drive. So all during this, she's being sexually assaulted in the back of the truck by one of the men.
Oh my gosh.
And I did all the research on this, and I just found out last night as I was kind of going a little deeper dive to find out a little bit more about the perpetrators. And they are complete opposites. So yeah, they're half brothers and they're 16 years apart. But the younger one is 6 foot and 210 pounds. And the older one is 5'2" and 130 pounds. So the older one is my height. So he's a little guy.
Very little.
Yeah. So he was kind of like the mastermind. And the younger one was more of the like muscle. Because he could grab these girls and throw them in the back.
Right.
Right. So kind of scary. Then they get to Vance's house. And I mean, this house is fucking terrifying. So they have later they have a police video, like the warrant. I get a warrant and they go into the house and they do a police video of this. And it is absolutely terrifying. There are bars on the windows on the inside of the house. And there's like curtains on the other side of the bars. So you can't even tell from the outside that there are bars on the windows. But there are bars on the window. It's extra creepy because they, like I said, from the outside, you can't tell how horrible it is on the inside. There's bars on the windows. They have kind of like what they refer to as a torture chamber in a closet. So they like have this closet where they have, again, the tie downs for the car, where they can chain up women in the closet when they're not using her. And then they have a bed that has chains on it too for when they are using her. And yeah, terrifying. So, and Michelle said that the 2 men rarely spoke to each other, and she felt like it wasn't their first time. And they sometimes would wear eye masks, like the kind that you wear when you're sleeping, but they had holes where the eyes are so they could see out. So I don't know, kind of like Zorro.
Yeah, that's what I was picturing as Zorro
right.
when you said that. That's or
kind of
Ninja Turtles.
Just a little bit terrifying.
Right.
And they would take Polaroids of her in like various positions and like bound, like they obviously loved bondage, and they had her tied up a lot. They also had a homemade electric device, which she described as kind of like a taser, but it was homemade. It wasn't like a store-bought one. I don't even know if they had store-bought tasers in 1988.
That's honestly really scary, though, because you can't regulate the electricity on that thing then.
Yeah, and you don't, I think, like, tasers now, I mean, they have to, like, charge before you can use them again, and if it's homemade, I don't know that they would have to do that. Like, they could just constantly use it.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
So she was raped and sodomized multiple times. She was forced to call the men Master X, and she had a litter box in the corner for a restroom. How heartbreaking is that?
Yeah, that's
so sad.
So sad. So sad.
So, right? And they kept her for several days, and she didn't know if she was going to live. Like, she really thought, this is how I go. This is it. And then one random day, which we find out later was 7 days. She had no idea how long she'd been there. She just thought it was several days. It was 7 days, full 7 days. One of the men put a pillowcase over her head. I believe it was the younger one, Paul. So he put a pillowcase over her head and threw her in the truck and drove away. So she thought, the bigger guy has got me. He's going to take me out to the woods and he's going to kill me. Because she has no idea where she is. She has no idea what city she's in. She has no idea. But instead, he drives her all the way back to Portland and then just pushes her out of the truck and drives away. So, I mean, I guess to their credit, they were smart enough to get sex workers, so, like, nobody believed her. So she went and told the police right away all that she could remember. And there were a couple officers that were like, well, we believe you, but what can we do about it? Like, it's 1988. There's no DNA. They could do probably a rape kit. I don't even know if they had rape kits back then. I'm guessing probably not.
But I think that they did rape kits, but they couldn't process them. They didn't have DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could probably do... Because I know even back then, I've heard of cases even back then where they had, like, non-secretors and secretors, and they could do, like, blood typing if there was any kind of, like, blood on her or anything like that. But other than that...
Yeah, and, like, familial... DNA too, I think, is pretty much
I think so.
Kind of see, but there's nothing like there is now, obviously.
Right. So it was kind of like a situation where there were cops who did believe her, but they were like, we can't do anything about it. You don't know who they were. You can't even describe them because half the time they had masks on. They never said their names, so you have no idea what their names are, and you have no idea even what city you came from. You can't even she could barely describe the truck that they drove, but it had no, like, license plate number or anything like that. So they can't just, like, look for old beater white trucks with a camper top, in anywhere within Portland, the larger Portland area. Right. So, I mean, there was Officer Harry Jackson believed her, and he just kind of filed it away. But he was like, because he never forgot about her, and he knew, he really, really believed her. He was like, this girl is really, really telling the truth, but there's nothing I can do. And then other officers were like, but she's a sex worker, which is really sad, and she could just be telling a story, and she's a drug addict too. So, I mean, on top of all of that, they're just like, I don't know what we can do, and I don't even know if I believe her.
That's so sad. So sad to hear stories like that, because, I mean, a lot of rape victims they're not believed anyways, but adding the fact that you're a drug addict and a sex worker, it doesn't mean that you're a terrible person.
Exactly. You're still a person.
Exactly. Like, come on, people.
The fortunate thing, though, is, I mean, she's 20 years old, and she was scared straight, so she never went back to that life again. She never did drugs again. So that was good.
Yeah.
But then, in June of 1990, which was 2 years later, that's when 17-year-old Andrea Hood had the same thing happen to her. So she told the same story. She would typically wake up and go sell her body on the streets just to get enough money to feed her drug addiction for the day. So that day she'd left the home at 2 or 3 in the morning. She wasn't exactly sure. She was like, it was early in the morning. And she said she was kept in the House of Horrors with these two men while they raped and tortured her for 2 days. So she told the same story. Like, I, met up with these guys for a date. I got in the truck. They pulled over. Somebody came out of the back of the truck, threw me in the back of the truck with a pillowcase on top of my head, chained me up, sexually assaulted me on the way to their house. And then she got to the house, and she's the one who called it the House of Horrors. So she said the same thing. Bars on the windows on the inside of the house. There was a closet. She said that there was a closet just like Michelle had said, but she was actually never put in the closet because the two men were soundproofing the closet. And they even told her, like, we're soundproofing the closet. They were adding things in there like ropes and chains and gags and whips and things like that, like a torture chamber, basically. But she never actually went into the closet. They never put her in the closet because they were working on the closet. Yeah. So I guess they were, quote unquote, improving it. I don't know.
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah. So she said she was there for 2 days, and at one point she went to the restroom, and they actually let her use the restroom though, and the restroom was down the hall. And the bedroom across the hall, the door happened to be open one time, and she noticed that window did not have bars on the window. So it was probably one of their bedrooms. It was probably Vance's bedroom, the older brother. So it did not have bars on the window. So she was like, that's it. That's my chance. That's how I'm going to get out of here. She said that there were a couple things that were different for Michelle. Weird things like they made her change her panties constantly. They made her say I love you to them. And they made her read a book that was called How to Be a Good Girl. And it was about how to be a submissive, subservient woman. Which, why do books like that exist? That just, I mean, no kink shame, but seriously.
Right. No, I'm with you.
Yeah. And something different with these guys, too, is they talked a lot in front of Andrea, but they only called each other by the name of Bill, which would get super confusing because they just called each other Bill. Like, they were both Bill.
I mean, why not come up with two names? Why just Bill?
Right? Like Bob and Joe. Like,
hey,
how hard is it? Yeah. Yeah, like, if you tried to call me from a different name, I would be like, huh? Oh, you're talking to me. Okay. Yeah. I don't know why you're not calling me Brooke. So she finally was like, okay, I'll read your book. Like, she was like, maybe if I kind of, because you hear that all the time with rape victims where they're like, if I just do what they say, maybe they'll let me go. Maybe they'll leave me alone, or they won't kill me, or, if I trick them into thinking that I'm into it, then maybe they won't be as hard on me. So she's like, I'll read your book. So, but she was like, but I can't read it with my hands cuffed to the bed. So they uncuffed one of her hands so she could read the book. So she pretended like she was reading the book, and she managed to get the other cuff off with the hand that was free. And then she quickly slipped her feet out of the restraints, and she ran out of the room, apparently there were guns like all over the house that they were using to threaten her with. So she picked up a shotgun and used it to break the window open in the room across the hall. This girl's a bad bitch, man. Is 17, 16 years old. I mean, she had a will to live. That is she's amazing.
Badass woman, because there's no way I know myself back at 16. There's no way I'd be that strong.
No.
So
I would be the subservient one that's like, yeah, I'll read your book. Like,
okay, give it to me.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's no telling how you would be in a certain situation.
Yeah.
But wow. So she ran across the hall, like I said, and she broke out the window with the shotgun. She climbs through the window and just throws the gun down on the ground and runs. And she's like, I know they're on my heels. Like, she can hear one yell to the other, get her, she's going to get away, she can't get away. So she's like, they are right on my heels. So she's bloody because she's crawled through this broken window, and she's naked, and she's running down the street. She has no idea where she is. She's just screaming and running down the street. And a neighbor happens to see her and is like, come here, and gets her in their house and calls the police. So She eventually goes to the police station, and then she goes to the hospital. They clean up her, the, like, cuts and stuff that she got from the window, and she's able to direct them back to the house that she came from. So she's just like kind of in the back seat of a cop car, and they're just driving her around trying to find this house, and she spots the house. And the house is located on Northeast Olympic Street, and inside the home they find Vance Roberts and his younger half-brother, Paul Jackson. So, of course, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, we kidnapped that girl. No. They're like, we didn't kidnap her. She was a, quote, homeless girl that we picked up on the street, and we were just trying to help her out. But she suddenly freaked out, stole some money, and ran screaming down the street.
Likely story.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, though, I mean, even then, like, even now, I'm impressed that the cops weren't like, well, yeah, she's a drug addict, sex worker, like, do we really believe her? So I'm glad that they believed her. So they got a warrant for the house, and this is when they have this super creepy video of them going around the house, and they find a Polaroid of Andrea on the fridge that she's, like, all tied up, and it's just, like, on the fridge, like you would put, like, a good report card. Like,
yeah, so seems like seems like a place to put that, yeah.
Right. Okay. So they find and then they find all kinds of other creepy things. They find a bag of several clean and used panties, and it's in like a shipping bag, like what it would have been shipped in. And then there's lots of graphic bondage magazines. There's handwritten notes about other women they were stalking, and they showed it briefly on the documentary I was watching, and it said things like, you know, mid-20s, brown hair, and it would say, like, the street that they saw her on, and how often she was out there, and when they saw her.
That's so creepy.
They were stalking other women, too, yeah. And so they confront the brothers, like, so, you know, like, it's fine, like, you're into bondage magazines. I mean, there's a reason there are such things. Like, people are into that kind of stuff, so no kink shaming, but they were like, but what about these Polaroids of these women that you have bound? I mean, it doesn't look consensual, but it could be, you know, you never know. And so they're like, it doesn't look consensual. Yeah. And they're like, oh, they're just old girlfriends. Like, they were totally into it. And so they're like, uh-huh. So, armed with the two confirmed victims. Oh, by the way, so they find all these Polaroid pictures. So they're kind of circulating these Polaroids amongst the cops and showing them the pictures to be like, do you know any of these women? And they're circulating it to Vice because they know that Andrea is a sex worker. So they're like, maybe all the others are as well. So they're circulating it to the Vice squad to see if anybody recognizes anybody. And our trusty police officer who actually believed Michelle back in the day, Harry Jackson, he gets his hands on the pictures and he says, oh, I know this one. This is Michelle. I know her. And so they contact Michelle, and then Michelle picks the brothers out of a photo lineup. So they do confirm the one from those Polaroids. But the rest of the Polaroids are the ones that I was talking about that they never confirmed who those victims are. So we don't know if they were actual victims, if they were previous girlfriends who were into it and it was consensual, or if they were victims that never made it out alive. We don't know. So that's terrifying. Terrifying. It's really sad. Yeah. But they do have the two victims, and the two victims are saying, yes, these are the guys who did it. So armed with that and the evidence from the house, they're able to arrest the brothers. So they arrest them, and they take them to jail, of course, and they're booked and everything. But then in February 1991, their mother bonds them out of jail. So they're out on bond, and they flee. So this is in 1991. So 1988 was Michelle's kidnapping. 1990 was Andrea's kidnapping. And then 1991, they're out on bond and they flee. So
sounds about right.
Right. And they never find them. They don't find them. So they're on the run. Yeah. They're on the run. And then randomly in 2006, 15 years later, Vance Roberts, who's the older brother, unexpectedly just walks into the Washington County Jail and turns himself in. in Oregon.
Well, guilt can get you sometimes.
Yeah, 15 years, right?
Thank God that Vance did it. Like, he went in there and turned himself in, but...
For sure. I mean, he probably... I mean, I can imagine being on the run and just constantly looking over your shoulder. Mm-hmm. Not that I feel bad for him, because both Andrea and Michelle were also looking over their shoulder constantly, because they're named in the court documents and everything, so they know who they are. They know who their victims are. And so for 15 years, he's on the run. And he claims he was homeless for the whole 15 years, and he was living under bridges in the area. And investigators are like, sure you were. Like, we didn't see you for 15 years. Like, we knew that you had jumped bail, and we had, his picture, and they had warrants out for his arrest and everything. And they didn't find him for 15 years. So they're like, bullshit. But then later they had evidence that he fled to Virginia, which, that's damn far, man. If you're going to flee to the freaking opposite side of the country.
Right, exactly.
It worked for him. So, he never would give him any more information. So he just kind of turned himself in, never said why, never said where he was, nothing. But he turned himself in. So... He did go to court, though. He didn't plead guilty. He did go to court. I don't think he must have pled not guilty, though. The defense lawyer's defense tactic was to purport that these women were also committing a crime because they were sex workers. Like, as in, he had every right to kidnap and rape them because they were sex workers and drug addicts.
Of course. Anyway. It's like going back to she wore a skimpy skirt so I could do whatever I wanted to her. That's the way I read that situation.
Exactly. I even wrote, insert eye roll here. Yeah. So, in the end, obviously, this tactic didn't work because, they're still human beings. And he openly mocked the victims in court. Like, he was like, I'm a sex worker. He kidnapped me.
The defense lawyer or Vince?
No, Vance did.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, come on.
But the defense lawyer was kind of a douche anyway.
Yeah.
But he did end up getting charged with a whole slew of charges, including sodomy, kidnapping, rape, sex abuse, possession of a controlled substance, which I don't know why on that one, because I never read anywhere that he drugged them. Possibly just when they did the warrant for his house, they found some drugs, but I didn't see it in the video. Right. But in the end, he was sentenced to 108 years in prison.
Well, good.
Damn. I mean,
Vance.
They didn't charge him with, like, evading police or anything like that, which you would think they would, because he was on the run for 15 years, but I guess maybe they didn't because he turned himself in. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But they never charged him with anything like that. I don't know on that one. But 108 years is definitely punishment enough. So but he never turned on his brother. He never told of his location. He never said anything about his brother. He never gave him up. So investigators later found that likely Paul Jackson's father knew where he was the whole time, because he had visited the city where they eventually found, spoiler alert, they find Paul too. But he had visited the city where they had found Paul multiple times over 2 decades. So they're like, he knew where he was. And Michelle, there's a video of Michelle where Michelle's like, I'm surprised that they haven't charged the father with anything, like aiding and abetting, because he wasn't aiding and abetting him, like he wasn't with his father, but his father obviously knew where he was because he visited that town multiple times, and he's like, no, I was just going for vacation. Like, I didn't know where he was. I haven't seen him in 2 decades.
Of course.
Which is bullshit.
Bullshit.
So Vance turned himself in 2006. So fast forward 10 more years in 2016. And the case appeared on The Hunt with John Walsh, which I don't remember this TV show at all. But I know I've heard of this case before. I think it's still going, right? I think so. Yeah, I believe so. It's on. I think it's on CNN, but I could be wrong. It was. I found the clips of it on the CNN website, so it might be on CNN. I'm not sure. But immediately after it aired, there was an anonymous tip saying that he was in Mexico, that they know who he is and he's in Mexico, and he's not going by Paul Jackson. He's going by Pablo Bennett Hamilton. Oh. So he so because they got this anonymous tip, then and this was 23 years after the more recent incident. So, and he was like, it was 23 years after he skipped bail. That's what it was. And he was found and arrested in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he was believed to have lived in Mexico for several years. So they're not sure if he immediately went down there after when he jumped bail in 1991, but pretty soon after he jumped bail in 1991. And he was 18 when he jumped bail. So you would think, like, there's no way he just got down to Mexico all by himself.
Yeah, there's no way.
You know, at 18, there's no way.
Nope.
But he had like a whole new identity. Like I said, he was going by Pablo Bennett Hamilton. And when marshals did pick him up in Guadalajara, he denied his identity. He said he wasn't even a U.S. citizen. He was married and had 2 children.
Oh my gosh.
And
that poor wife and kids.
Uh-huh. And you know, this is so cool. This is how they like kind of followed up on the anonymous tip and they found him. So when the person called in the anonymous tip, they called in that his name was Pablo Bennett Hamilton. So this savvy officer looked online and was just like Googling Pablo Bennett Hamilton, like all the different variations of his name, and found a Paul Bennett on LinkedIn. So they caught him because on his LinkedIn account, they looked at it and it had listed previous jobs and current work that included electronic work and automotive work. So they knew, like, that was his background. That's what he knew. And they found out where he worked from his LinkedIn account, and that's where they ended up arresting him.
That's crazy.
On LinkedIn. Like, that's so cool. Like, I think it's crazy when they find people based upon, like, people are stupid. I mean, you've been on the run for 23 years and you put up a fucking LinkedIn account. Like, really?
I mean,
it's not his real name, but still. Yeah, so he was 45 at the time. And so in May of 2016, he was extradited to the U.S. and he took a plea deal, but it was for all the same charges as Vance, but he only got 18 years in prison. And so he was 46 at the time when he was sentenced, so he'd be out at age 64. And I think he got less time because both victims did claim that Vance was indeed the ringleader while Paul was more of like a follower. But they were like, he didn't stop any of it. And Paul he claimed that he never raped either of the girls. But both of them, I mean, I didn't explicitly see anywhere where they said that he did, but both of them were like, he was just as culpable. Like, he was there, he was tying me down, he was holding me down. He was more like, he helped them kidnap them. Yeah. And so that was kind of more.
With the first girl, didn't you say that when they were driving that 25 miles or whatever, that they were taking turns raping her?
They weren't taking turns. There was just one of them was in the back, and I don't know if the one that was in the back was Vance. Okay. And then Paul took over and was driving. I don't know, but she just said one of them was sexually assaulting her in the back.
Oh, so, okay. Now, I'm on the same page now. Okay.
So yeah. So after he was arrested and they were doing the sentencing, more than 30 acquaintances from Guadalajara wrote letters stating that Paul was a wonderful person, worker, father, friend, who was a deeply religious man, etc. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, nobody cares. I mean, did it influence the plea deal? It's possible. But he was every bit as guilty as Vance. Yeah. Even though Vance was the mastermind. But the other thing too that was mentioned in this Crime Watch Daily video that I watched was that if they do find out who the other victims were in these Polaroids, that they can try them again for those crimes as well. So that's why they're like really pushing that they really want to know who these other women are. So Crime Watch Daily actually had a forensic artist because the Polaroids were so graphic and they can't like post those obviously online, so they had a forensic artist draw pictures of what the women looked like then and what they likely would look like now. So they did, I think they only did 2 of the women, though, because they were the only 2 women that you could clearly see their faces in the Polaroids. So, but they still have the Polaroids on evidence so that, you know, if they ever do come across someone that says, you know, that might have been me, and then they can show them the picture and be like, is this you? Or was this you?
Right.
Then they'll be able to confirm it that way. So now, so this, I mean, it's not too much later, 5 years later. So now Vance Roberts is 68 years old, and he's still serving his time in Two Rivers Correctional Institution in Oregon. And his earliest possible release date is November of 2069. He'd be 116 years old.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. If Betty White didn't make it, he's not going to make
it. Right. Okay. So true. And Paul Jackson is 52 years old, and he's serving time in Oregon State Correctional Institution, so they're not in the same jail. And he'll be released in January of 2030. And now, I would just want to end it on a high note. Andrea Hood lives in Portland, and she's currently a lead community manager at Central City Concern, which is a program that, quote, helps people find home, regain health, and move toward long-term stability and success. Every year we serve more than... I know, it's so awesome. Every year we serve more than 13,000 people experience or at risk of homelessness with affordable and supportive housing, person-centered healthcare, addiction recovery, and employment assistance. How
That's
cool
amazing.
Is that? And you know how I found that? Amazing. LinkedIn.
Huh. I mean, LinkedIn, I use it for work. I get it. It's amazing.
I have
it's
a
an
LinkedIn
amazing
account.
tool.
I don't think I've logged in 15 years, but I have a LinkedIn account.
I log in every day.
Add a little bit more on there. And she has a master's in human services, which is awesome. My bachelor's is in human services, so
that's awesome. That's really cool. From her beginning life, just to kind of see. I mean, she literally, as the olden days term states, she pulled herself up by her bootstraps, and she did the dang thing. So now, look at her. She's thriving. That's awesome.
And so did the other victim, Michelle. So Michelle currently lives in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She moved there in 2000, and she started a program called Warriors, which stands for Women Against Rape, inviting other rape survivors. So that works to create a support system for survivors, offering free services to make life easier for rape victims as they go through the court process. So she's also doing the damn thing. And she's a machine operator at a production plant, too. So, yeah. So I love that they, both grew from their experience, even though it was an awful experience, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But they both grew from it, and they used it to help other people. And Michelle still speaks out saying that we really need to find these other women, not only because she's like, I really want to support them, and I really want them to know that they're not the only ones, and that they do matter, especially if they're sex workers, because she's like, I was there too. And so she's like, I want them to know that they're not out there alone. And she's like, and I also want to know that they have survived, because we don't know if they've survived. And so also I think, I mean, she didn't say this, but I think a little part of her is thinking if they do find them, then they can also prosecute Vance and Paul even further. Right. Because, I mean, obviously Vance has a 108-year sentence, so I don't think he's going anywhere soon. But Paul, and he's not. He doesn't even have parole or anything. And Paul... Right. I mean, he'll be 60-something when he gets out, and he will not have seen his kids. I don't know how old his kids were, but even if they were newborn, he would not see them grow up because he got 18 years. So, I mean, at least there's that punishment. I mean, his poor wife, though. Can you imagine?
No.
Oh, his poor wife.
I can't, actually. It's awful. Just so sad to even think about.
So we're going to post the pictures of the sketches of the women so if you know any of the women, or if your mother or grandmother has told you the story of this crazy thing that happened to her when she was younger, there is a phone number that you can call. So it's Crime Stoppers of Oregon, and it's 503-823-HELP, HELP. Or you can submit a tip to Crime Watch Daily, which is where I got all the information, a lot of the information from. This one had a lot of information, which was actually kind of fun. Like I'm getting better at my research, guys. I even went to like the prison records and found out like where they were and when they'll be released and stuff. So, yeah, this one had a lot of information on it, so that was really good. But make sure you follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, all the things. Our Facebook group is really growing. Last I looked, we had like 180 followers. So if we get to 250, we'll do a giveaway. I'll give away something. I don't know what yet.
Yes.
Maybe a mug.
I love giveaways.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I kept getting notifications all day today. Like I just kept
people liking it. Awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. Also, if you guys want to review us on iTunes, that would be helpful. Because the more reviews you have, the higher up you go in the ratings, whether they're good or bad. So give it to us, guys. We want to know.
We'll take it all.
Right. We want to know. Like I said, this format was a little different because I did all of the research. So we're going to kind of switch it up for now since it's early in our episodes. This is only episode 5?
5.
Yeah.
Yep.
5. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. And Andrea might do the next one. I might do the next one. We'll kind of just trade off a little bit. So I love doing research, and I am super busy as well, but I don't have a day job. So it allows me to do a little bit more research. I research while my children are sleeping. And then I go to bed, guys, and I don't have nightmares, which is good. Although last night I did have I guess it was kind of today. I took a nap and I had a nightmare, but it wasn't like a getting brutally killed or raped nightmare. It was like my purse got stolen and I had to call the police and get that all figured out, and I woke up in a sweat and it was not fun.
I mean, those are my fears too, so I get it.
Yeah, super fair. I was like on vacation too, so it was even worse, like in my dream. I was on vacation and I didn't, you don't know the like area, you don't know the police station, and I'm like trying to tell him that the car got broken into and my purse was stolen and my credit cards were all getting built up and everything, and yeah, it was anxiety. I was hyperventilating on the phone with the cops when I woke up.
Oh my God.
So I'm glad it wasn't real. When I woke up, I was like, oh, thank God. Because that was terrifying.
Yeah.
So this is going to air on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah. And our next one will be California. I have not picked the case yet, so I don't know what it's going to be, but it will be California. California is such a big state with a lot of real good murder in it, so I'm sure we'll find a good one. So yeah, in the meantime, follow us on all the things, rate us and review us. Just when you think you're out,
we pull you back in.
Bye-bye.